I guess we need to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I am your Nickel Giza 2020 president. My name's Steve Randolph, and the board and I welcome you to the 2020 Spring Symposium. This is our first virtual conference our organization has attempted, so you may have to bear with us a little bit as we go through this. The pandemic, of course, has brought many challenges to each of you and also to our respective organizations. We too, as a board, have been faced with challenges as it relates to our spring conference. Just a little over a month ago, we were going to, knowing we were going to cancel the spring symposium at Wilmington, Randy Kress suggested and actually urged that we attempt to pull together a virtual conference. It appeared to be a daunting task, I know for myself as well as others, especially with the short time frame. But with the hard work and talent of numerous individuals, here we are today. And we can't be more excited about bringing this opportunity to our membership. I cannot be more proud of the team and individuals who put this together. I'd like to recognize them and make introductions beginning with our board members. Here today we have our past president, Mike Taylor from Pitt County. Our president-elect is Ray Hall from Carteret County. Hardik Patel from Marge County is our treasurer. Our secretary is Randy Kress from Rowan County. Representing K-12 is Amy Walker, Ashe County Public Schools. We have Melissa Coleman as membership chair from the city of Fayetteville. For professional development, we have Glenn Hastead from Onslow County. For communications, we have the ever so talented Darren Gorowski from the city of Goldsboro. And of course, last but not least, our conference chair, Felina Harris from Mecklenburg County. I would like to add a little bit about Felina. Felina has been nothing short of amazing. She's connected all the dots and put all the pieces of the puzzle together. We couldn't have done this, accomplished this without her and the amazing team that she assembled. And we had some really great people on her team. They included the talents of Shannon Tufts, and actually, just a shout out to Shannon. She turned 29 today. It is her birthday. So everybody make sure you wish Shannon a happy birthday. Thanks for all that you do, Shannon. We have Maurice Farrell and his team. What a great team that he has there at the SOG. And we want to thank him along with Jamar Jones and Paul Bonner and others that are on his team. I'm sure there was a lot working behind the scene. And we have Amy Walker, who has done an exceptional job with our business partners. I want to thank Amy for everything that she's done. Easy AV and others. For just a few minutes, I'm going to turn it over to Felina because I'm sure she has a lot to say about her team and the conference ahead of you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all. Thank you for taking a chance on us and joining this virtual conference with us. I am so sad that we are not in Wilmington. I look forward to this trip. I've looked forward to it for the last 13 or 14 years. That's where I've been in May. But these are unprecedented times, so we're doing different things, and we're glad to be able to bring this virtual conference to you. Again, I would like to thank Randy for the idea, and as IT people, we should have been able to bring it together, and we did. And like Steve said, there may be some bumps along the road, but just bear with us. We're trying to do our best to give you some valuable sessions that you can use on down the road. Again, thank you to the team, the staff who worked. It wasn't me. I didn't do it alone. A lot of people worked very, very hard to make this happen, and I appreciate all of everybody that you see on the screen and others who worked in the background. Jessica has just been amazing. Jessica Kahn from UNC and Jamar from UNC. I'm starting to name names, but I don't want to miss anybody. But we appreciate everybody who made this happen. As I always say, you are IT. Let's make it happen. Thanks, Steve.
All right. Thank you, Felina. One last thing I'd like to add before we move on to our talented keynote speaker. I, as the president and as a fellow Nickel GISA member, in fact, cannot say enough how proud I am of you and your respective organizations regarding all that you have accomplished during the pandemic. Originally, the theme of our conference was superhero related. Those that know me, I'm a big comic book collector and superhero fan. And so Felina was putting together a conference related to superheroes. And we even had to illustrate this an IT man, an IT man, as our superhero. And that is you. I want everyone to just think for a minute with me what constitutes or defines a superhero. And once you think about it, some of the things that you can come up with is one that saves the day, one that keeps others from harm, one that saves lives, one that fights the battles on the front line. And through these trying times as IT professionals, you have been finding solutions for your organizations and employees to do teleworking, remote meetings, virtual, social distancing measures, customer interaction, and so on. You've utilized technology to keep people healthy and to save lives. And I can say this with complete confidence, and I tell my staff this: you may never know the name or the face of the person or persons you have saved, but I can guarantee that someone is healthy and alive today that is directly related to what you and your IT team has done. And for this, I think that each of you should pat yourself on the back and be proud that you are superheroes to others. We're superheroes every day throughout the year, but through this pandemic, you've been even more so. So I want to thank you, and our Nickel GISA board thanks you for all that you do. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our opening keynote. Again, bear with me, but I want you to close your eyes for a moment and imagine a speaker who combines an improv comedy ability of Whose Line Is It Anyway, the motivational speaking power of Tony Robbins, and the comedic delivery of Lewis Black. So think about that for a minute. And then I want you to open your eyes and stop dreaming, because our speaker today is nothing like that. Now that your expectations have been lowered, let me tell you a little bit about our speaker. And I'm sorry, but my southern accent, I might butcher the name a little bit, but Avish Parashar is quite possibly the world's only motivational improviser. He delivers high energy, interactive, and funny keynotes both in the U.S. and abroad. And he works with organizations who want their employees to respond more effectively to change. He also promises to, and this is coming from him, he also promises that he wears pants on 100% of his virtual presentations. So let's hope he does so again today. Today, you will be showing us how we can all use ideas from improv comedy to improvise, adapt, and innovate in our ever-changing world. Ladies and gentlemen, here's our speaker, Avish Parashar.
All right, thank you very much, Steve. Hey, Steve, if you could just nod, make sure you hear me. I want to make sure that my audio is coming through okay. Steve, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. All right, here we go. Welcome, everyone. My name is Avish Parashar. And what I want to do is, before I get off and rolling here, I want to start by asking everyone a question. What one thing do you think if everyone in the world was better at, it would make the world a better place, and it would help you get through these challenging times we're going through? Just think of the answer, and if you want to, jot it down or hold it in your head. Now, if you're like most of the audiences that I have interacted with, you probably came up with answers like kindness, respect, communication, consideration. And I agree, all of those are wonderful things. But I am here to share with you that I have a different answer to that question. My answer to that question is improv comedy. Now, I know that might seem like an odd sort of thing to say, especially as we're on this kind of webinar format. So what I want to do first is demonstrate exactly what I mean by improv comedy, so we are on the same page with exactly what it is. And rather than explain it, I'm going to demo it by playing an improv game for you right now. Obviously, it's a game I'm going to play solo, Nope, just making sure these messages aren't meant for me. All right, sorry about that. Okay, it's a game I'm going to play solo. And here's what's going to happen. I'm going to begin telling you all a story. And I have this bell. And at some point, I'm going to ring the bell. And when I do, I'm going to have to change my story, but continue in some way. So if my story was, once upon a time, there was a girl with a pet dog. Once upon a time, there was a girl with a pet cat, with a pet mouse, with a pet iguana, whatever. As long as I ring, I keep changing it. But then at some point, I stop ringing, and then I keep going as if the last thing was said. So I keep telling the story, but in this example, the dog, the cat, and the mouse would be gone. We'd have a story about a girl and her pet iguana. All right. So to prove this is improvised, because I am doing this myself and ringing the bell, I'm going to make this a little bit interactive. It's a little bit harder over the internet, but you know, we got to innovate. So in the chat, what I'd like you to do is in the chat box, just write down what are, when the lockdown is lifted and you're able to go back out, where is a place that you're really looking forward to going to, but maybe someplace unusual? Like you're the only one who's really excited about going back to this place. So just in the chat box, write down a suggestion or two of a location, and I'm going to take one of those and make this story about that. France, all right, let's see. Used music stores, cruising, the wildlife refuge, awesome, fantastic ideas. Okay, and just real quick, I saw some things coming through. People were saying, can we change the view so I'm not so small? You can control that on your end, I believe. You can switch from grid view to speaker view, and then I should be taking up your full screen instead of just being one square. All right, we got some amazing ideas. All right, I'm going to tell you a story about going to a used music store. And I'm going to ring the bell and change it, and we'll see how this goes. This is an example of improv comedy. Once upon a time, there was a man named John, and he used to love to go to used music stores. And one day he walked into his favorite, and he saw this album he had been waiting for. He saw that it was closed. He saw that they no longer had records, it was only CDs. He saw it was all live music. They had replaced all their music with musicians. And he went up to the owner and said, what's going on? Where are all the records? And the owner said, well, people weren't buying those, so we've turned into a club. The owner said, well, we got repossessed by a place and we lost all our records, so this is the best we can do. The owner said, well, my brother-in-law was really nagging me, so I let him use this for his band. And John looked over and saw that the band was playing violin. They were playing flutes. They were playing jug. It was like this jug band. And he's like, you know what? I like rock music. I don't want to listen to a jug band. He said, oh my God, this is so dulcet tones. I love this jug band. Can I buy this music? Well, the owner of the store said, well, they don't have a record yet. The owner said, yes, in fact, you would be the only one buying it. The owner said, no, you can't buy the record, but you can take this band home. All right, I'm going to stop right there. That story could go on and on, but I'm going to stop right there. I just wanted to do that to give you a flavor of what improv comedy is. So you kind of go along in one direction, and then you get creative and have to switch. Now, you might be sitting there right now saying to yourself, okay, well, that's improv comedy, and that's high energy and fun and all, but what on earth does that have to do with the real world? Why would Avish say that that is the most important skill that people can use to make the world a better place and to help us get through this lockdown and pandemic? Well, if you are thinking that, I'd like you to consider one important thing, and that is that life isn't scripted. No matter how much we want it to be with our plans, our agendas, our to-do lists, our 2020 vision boards, right? All those goals we had at the beginning of the year, life is the ultimate improvisation. And just when you think you've got things all figured out, the universe comes along and goes, ding, now deal with this. Or as I like to say, sometimes ding happens. And what I found is that while planning is important, I'm not diminishing all those tools. They're all useful and helpful. But what I have found is that what ultimately separates people who succeed from those who struggle is not just how well they plan, but rather how quickly and effectively they respond to those ding moments when they occur, because they inevitably will. Anyone can do well when everything goes according to the plan. I think we demonstrate our values as professionals, right? The way we pass the test is how we respond when things don't go according to plan. And we are right now literally dealing with the biggest ding moments any of us have ever gone through. There have been ups and downs and changes in global events, but the entire world is locked down. This is unprecedented. This is the biggest ding moment any of us have dealt with. Now, we've got the big scale things we have to deal with, and the ripple effect we have and how we have to deal with it. We've got to deal with it on a personal front. We have to deal with it at work. We have to deal with it as organizations. We have to deal with it as leaders. And remote working obviously is the one we're most adapting to right now. But there's a lot of other things. How do you manage your staff, right? How do you keep the bandwidth up? Everyone's got different bandwidth issues. How do you deal with people maybe not being as engaged or motivated? So there's lots and lots of issues going on around here. Now, my goal here is not to minimize or just make jokes about it and tell you, oh, just move on and be positive, but rather to share with you how the same skills that let an improv comedian play a game like Ding can help you be just a little bit more effective in all the good work that you do. You know, there's a quote from a Greek scholar named Pliny the Elder that is, the only thing that's certain is uncertainty. And even though right now is the most unprecedented time of change, really, our lives are in a constant state of change. In fact, Felina and I connected to have me speak at your conference before the pandemic was even on the radar. Because the fact is, especially in IT and in technology, things are constantly changing. So yes, my talk is going to be specifically giving you ideas to improvise and adapt in this situation, but in a much bigger way as well in everything that happens once this is long past us. I'm going to share with you one simple but powerful idea from the world of improv comedy, and then give you 3 ways you can apply that right away to stop just trying to get through the change, but to shift your focus, adapt and innovate, and maybe come out looking even better than when you went in. Along the way, I'm going to do some more improv comedy games. I will be playing them solo. If I was going to be live, I'd be dragging volunteers up, so you may be sad that's not happening, or you may be very happy I can't drag you up. But I'm going to be doing these solo, but I am going to need your help mostly through the chat window. Throughout the course of the talk, I am going to be asking for suggestions that I'm going to use as starting points for some of the improv exercises. So a couple things I may ask for are things like an unusual activity or hobby, something physical you like to do that is clean and PG rated, something that 2 people might disagree about. And then if I need more, I'll ask as we get to them. So just you can start keeping those in mind. When I need them, I will ask for them. I am communicating with you via the chat box. So if you have a question or something is unclear, if you throw it in the chat, I do have the chat up. I will try to answer those as we go. All right, so to start, I'm going to share with you one simple but powerful idea from the world of improv comedy. When you learn improv, it is one of the first things you learn. It's foundational to the world of improv, and I found it has long-reaching impact off stage. And that is simply to say yes and instead of yes but. In every moment, whether you're on stage or off, whether you're just dealing with life as normal or you're dealing with a ding moment, you have the choice of responding with a yes and or a yes but. And in improv, we use yes and. Now, if I was going to do this in an improv game, I'm not going to play a full game here, but just to give you an example of how this works in an improv context, if you could, in the chat box, just throw in an idea. What is something small, nothing too major, that 2 people might disagree over? Like where to go on vacation, what kind of food to get. What's a minor disagreement 2 people might have? Just throw that in the chat box. Dinner, whether to get a dog or a cat, what's for supper, dinner selection, okay, where to eat. All right, awesome. Kids, some of these are not small issues. Kids, politics, money. So I'm going to start with a small one. I love the idea of whether, I love these great ideas coming in. Room temperature, fantastic. I'm going to go with whether to get a dog or a cat. You prefer a dog or a cat? So we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to be playing 2 parts. Let's say husband and wife. I'm not going to do a whole character impersonation. It's just a quick exercise. The first time through, one person is going to recommend a dog or a cat. And after that, every sentence is going to start with the 2 words, yes, but. And then I'll redo the conversation using yes and, so you can feel the difference in the energy. All right, so try to pay attention to try to notice the difference in the energy and feel of the conversation. All right, here we go. Hey, I was thinking about getting a pet, and I really think we should get a cat. Yeah, but cats are surly and mean, and I really want an affectionate animal. Yes, but cats are very self-contained. You know, you don't have to mess with them at all. Yes, but what is the point of getting something just because it's convenient when it's not going to snuggle you? I want a dog that's going to really jump on me and love me. Yes, but a cat will stay away from you, and you know it won't poop everywhere, and you won't have to worry about cleaning up the house. Yes, but I hate cats. All right, so that's a quick argument, and that is an argument, right? You can see that yes, but right away. Now watch, if instead of starting every sentence with yes, but, every sentence starts with yes, and you can kind of see how that goes. Hey, I was really thinking about getting a cat. We really want a pet, and I think we should get a cat. Yes, and cats can be good if we find the right one. Yes, and I totally want you involved in this process. I'm not just going to go bring a cat home. Yes, and some cats will be affectionate and loving, and then they will just sit on your lap, and it's great. Yes, and you'll get that love, and you don't have to worry about taking care of them. Yes, and we can also then go on vacation without having kenneling all the time. Yes, and we'll also save money because cats are cheaper. Yes, and we can use that money to really fill our hearts with love in other ways instead of just pets. All right, and so on and so on. Now that's and get a dog. Yes, I was thinking about going there, but then that starts going in the realm of yes, but. So that's a silly conversation, right? And it's an artificial way of talking. You wouldn't normally always say yes, but. But just from observing that, you could probably immediately see the difference and almost feel the difference between yes, but and yes, and, right? The yes, but conversation was an argument. It was, I want a cat, I want a dog. Yes, but, yes, but, yes, but. You could see that conversation wasn't going to get anywhere. It was just all, let's argue until one person gives in, or we just stop talking mad at each other. The yes and conversation, you can see, was collaborative. It was positive. We were working together. Now, in this context, you might say, well, what if the person really didn't want a cat? And you're right. This is just an improv game. And I'm going to get to what that means. But in general, you can see that yes and is positive and collaborative. And if you notice, yes and was also creative. Because in order to say yes and, I couldn't just dig my heels in and say, yeah, but I don't want a cat. I had to really think, what could be good about this? Yes, and we can save money. Yes, and we can find the right cat. So it moves from yes, butting about the problem to yes, ending about the solution. Now, right now, I know some of you are sitting there thinking, as I said, I got to talk to my realist friends in the room. You have a fish tank. Well, that is a whole different yes, and there. Right now, my realist friends are sitting there thinking, well, Avish, that's great, but in the real world, you can't just say yes, and. Sometimes you disagree. You can't just agree with everything and say yes, and. And you're right. So what I'm sharing here is not a literal technique. So I'm not suggesting that if your colleague were to come to you and say, hey, I haven't worked on this project for 3 weeks, can you do it for me? That you say, yes, and let me pick up your dry cleaning too. Okay? It's not a literal technique. And to anyone watching who might be in a marriage or a relationship, bit of advice, I've been married for about 10 years now. If your wife ever comes to you and says, does this make me look fat? Yes, and a little old too. Like, okay, no, it's not a literal technique. You don't just automatically say yes and all the time. But what I'm talking about here is ding moments and default responses. And for so many of us, the default response to anything new, different, not in our plan. Someone asks us yes, but work. No, if someone asks us make me look fat, yes, but also doesn't really work. Really, there's no good answer there other than no, of course. But all this to say, there's not a literal technique. And our default response to anything outside of our realm of what we want, what our plan was, what our expectation was, or anything that makes us feel defensive, we often respond to right away with a yes, but. And all I'm suggesting is we can reap some tremendous benefits by switching that yes, but to a yes, and. Because here's the thing. When someone comes to you with a problem, an issue, a complaint, or even something positive like an idea, an opportunity, the first thing they want is for you to do what they say. The next thing they want is for you to feel like you listened to them, respected them, and considered their idea. When the first words out of your mouth are, yes, but, even if you are right, it immediately creates a blockade and hurts the relationship and creates a sense of disrespect. Now, you're all IT, IS professionals, and I know the world you live in because I have a degree in computer engineering and I worked in IT as a programmer and as a support person. Go figure, the Indian guy worked in IT, right? But I understand the world, and it's not about logic, right? And this is the biggest challenge with yes, but versus yes, and. Because if you're like me, you had a number of occasions where someone would come to you and say something that was wrong. Like, oh, no, this is what happened, or here's why this doesn't work, or I need you to do this. And you're smart, and you know your job, and you want to immediately say, yeah, but let me tell you why you're wrong. Logically, you are correct. Relationship-wise, leadership-wise, customer service-wise, it's immediately creating a blockade that hurts the relationship and is going to make your life more stressful and harder in the long run. I can't tell you the number of times I had those conversations, whether it was a user who told me exactly what they wanted, and when I gave them exactly what they wanted, they told me it was wrong. Or for a programming standpoint, or in a support standpoint, when someone would share with me that something wasn't working and here is why. I could tell you some stories that still bother my mind to this day, but you've probably got ones that are even better. And back in those days, I would just say yes, but, and we'd hit an impasse. Now, to switch to yes, and, the push comes back. The pushback comes from not realizing there's more than one way of using it, right? You don't have to use yes, but to just, or you don't have to say yes, and to agree and go with them. There's another way of using yes, and, right? So if someone comes to you and says, let's get a dog, you don't have to say, yeah, but I hate dogs. And you don't have to say, yes, and let's get 5. You can instead pivot and get curious and dig deeper. Yes, and why do you want to get a dog? Yes, and what are the benefits of getting that dog? Yes, and tell me more about that. Because when someone comes to you with an issue, a problem, a complaint here, this is often not the real issue. It's something deeper. And when we start with yes, but, we may be keeping the focus on something that may not matter at all. When we say yes, and, we can get to that deeper issue. Or sometimes when we have a yes, and conversation, we may come up with a third solution that neither one of us would have thought of, right? As I said, when I'm doing the cat-dog version, yes, and forced me to be creative and think of new ideas. Maybe we come up with a new idea that neither one of us would have come up with on our own, like getting a fish, perhaps. I don't know, but something new. Finally, let's say there is no deeper issue, and let's say there is no third solution. When you say no or yes, but after having had a yes, and conversation, the rejection is met with very differently, because the person feels like you listened to them, respected them, and understood them. It's not about always agreeing and giving in and admitting the other person's right. It's about starting from a place of understanding instead of logic. And that's what's really hard, especially when you're dealing in stuff like technology and data and things that absolutely are right or wrong. But when we can pull back from that, our ability to work and connect with other people goes drastically up. So you can see how switching from yes, but to yes, and is really an amazing communication tool. But of course, this talk started talking about the situation we're going with and responding to change and the unexpected. And in this case, the switch from yes, but to yes, and is absolutely critical to make that happen in an efficient way. So what I'm going to do is share with you now 3 ways you can apply the idea of saying yes, and instead of yes, but to responding to change and the unexpected, so you can come out of the situation thriving instead of getting just through it. So the first thing to say yes, and to is to say yes, and to change in general. Or another way to say that is to say yes, and to thinking better, not back. To think better, not back. What I mean by that is that when ding happens or we're going through a change, the natural response is to want things to go back to the way they were before, even if that place wasn't so great, and even if that's cutting us off from better opportunities. If I could share a quick little example of this from my own life. A few years back, I was in a relationship. She was great. We got along great. We were falling in love. But the problem was there were some long-term compatibility issues. That was going to make it really hard for us to get married, have children, and raise a family together, which was really important to both of us. So we tried to work it out for a while, but eventually we made the very mature decision to go our separate ways so we could each find someone more compatible. It was good. It was an amicable breakup, and I was fine with it. For a little while. Well, okay, yes, a few years back, more than 10 years ago. Different story, different person. Someone said, I thought this was 10 years. All right, many years back, I guess. But we tried to work it out, and I felt good with it for a little while, because then I started to miss her after a little time passed. And then that little voice started in my head. You know that voice that says things like, maybe you shouldn't have broken up. Maybe you guys could have figured this out. Maybe you should try to get back together. Now, if you've ever been here, you know this is a horrible mental space to be in, because you start doing things self-respecting adults should not do, right? Like you make phone calls at hours of the night you should not make a phone call. You write and send long emotional emails that may have included poetry, that you may have written yourself. You put together and send mixtapes. Yes, I put together a mixtape. Now in this program, I can't see everyone on the call, and I think we may have some younger people on there. So just to cue you in, if you're unfamiliar with the concept of a mixtape, this is back in the day when it was harder to put together a selection of songs than just clicking on Spotify or iTunes. Back when you had to find the songs and, you know, record them onto some kind of physical medium, like burning them onto a CD or recording them onto a cassette tape. Sometimes by holding the cassette player up to the radio speaker and waiting for the DJ to stop talking, right? You remember these things. Yes, longer than 10 years ago this was, right? Back when you were going through a breakup, what you would do is you would put together a mixtape with a selection of songs of such emotional power that your ex, upon hearing this mixtape, would have no choice but to immediately fall back in love with you. Now, let me let you in on a little secret. Should you find yourself going through a breakup, tempted to put together a mixtape, don't do it. They don't work. There has never been a breakup in history where two people got back together because one person put together an awesome mixtape for the other. No one has ever said, oh, Phil Collins, our love is against all odds. Right? Doesn't work. Don't do it. Now, my situation was no different. We did not get back together. Even though I put together an epic mixtape. It had 2 Phil Collins songs on it. It was pretty awesome. We did not get back together. And it worked out so much better for me because a little while later, I met someone more compatible. We got together, we got married, and just almost 2 years ago now, we welcomed our second child into the world together. So I have a wonderful wife and 2 kids. But here's the thing. It worked out so much better for me. But back when I was going through that change, I didn't care that there was something better out there for me. And I didn't care that it wasn't the best relationship for me anyways. All I could think about, things were different, they had changed, and I just wish they could go back to the way it was before. And this is what we all do when we're responding to a ding moment or when we're going through a change. So let's say, you know, you've got a new supervisor all of a sudden. Yeah, but my old boss was so nice. Your group reorganized and I got to work with a new team of people. Yeah, but my old team was working so well together. You know, you decide to roll out this whole new software package you got to get familiar with now. Yeah, but the old package was so simple, right? We keep wishing things could be back like they were. Now that's dangerous for a few reasons. Number one, we can never make progress looking backwards. The more time we say, why can't things be like it was, it's time we can't move forward and adapt. Number two, this is a fast track to irrelevance. This is how organizations and individuals get left behind. By putting their head in the sand and wanting things to not change and wishing things could go back, the world is going to pass you by. Finally, it's usually a waste of time, right? All the things we complain about are not going to go back to the way they were before because we're complaining. We're just spinning our wheels, wasting time and energy. So in order to break out of that cycle, we need to change the question. Instead of saying, why can't we go back to the way it was before? We need to ask ourselves, how do we make it better? How do we make this new reality even better than the one I liked before so much? You got a new boss. Yes, and what are the strengths of my new boss that'll help me grow my career like my old one couldn't? We got a whole new team of people to work with. Yes, and what are the capabilities of these team members that'll let us accomplish things we could not with the old team? Oh, the old software package was so simple. Yes, and what are the features of the new one that once I learn them will make me more efficient and effective at what I do, right? We keep shifting our focus from how do we go back to how do we move forward. Now, you're not always going to get a brilliant answer, but by asking the question, you open your mind to opportunities you never would have seen otherwise. And here's the thing, you don't need a brilliant answer every time. One good answer every once in a while is enough to be transformative. Because most of the world is sitting there saying, why can't it be like it was? I don't want things to change. Let me resist. If you can be the one who says, how can I get this better? And you get a good answer and move forward, that's how you innovate. And that's how you differentiate. So yeah, so someone's chat question. The first step in applying yes and to deal with change, number one, stop making mixtapes, right? Stop putting time, energy, and effort trying to hold on to a reality that is no longer there and doesn't serve you. Instead say, how do we get better, not back? Now, the way you'll know you have a good answer to that question is to ask a follow-up. When you come up with an idea, as you're innovating, as you're adapting to a remote workforce and telecommuting and dealing with a spread out group that can't all get together, you'll come up with ideas. Ask yourself, if someone waved a magic wand and we could go back to the way it was before, would I, or would I keep doing things the new way? Because when we're going through a change, when we're trying to respond to a crisis, you'll have lots and lots of ideas, right? There are tons of ideas. There's things other people are doing that you're going to look at and say, that looks good. Ask yourself, would I keep doing that if I didn't have to? If the answer is no, then that's a getting through solution, not a getting better solution. If the answer is yeah, if I can get this to where I want, if we can make this work, then yes, I would keep doing this even if things went back the old way. So that starts by saying yes and to the change. Stop making mixtapes and say yes and how can we make this new reality even better than the old one I like? So that's the first step to saying yes and to apply to change. The second thing to say yes and to find opportunity and thrive right now is say yes and to your core. Say yes and to the core. As I said in the previous point, there are lots of different things you can focus on, and that's how we get distracted and overwhelmed. But for everything you do, whether it's in your job, your organization, your team, or at home, in your community, wherever, there's a few key things that are your highest priorities and your greatest strengths. If we want to adapt to change, we have to identify and focus on those. To demonstrate what I mean by this idea is I'm going to play another improv game now. This is definitely going to be the most ridiculous game I'm going to do, but I got some space. It's a very physical game, but we're going to have some fun with it. So just to start, all I need is in the chat box, if you could type in an activity or a hobby, but something that has a physical component to it. So not like stamp collecting, but something where you got to really move or interact with something. Spelunking, which is cave exploring, playing soccer, rugby, cycling, rock climbing, spinning plates, line dancing, snowboarding, surfing, bowling. All right, mowing, fishing. Okay, great ideas. Now, I like unusual ideas. It helps with my creativity and things I haven't heard before. So I'm going to go with line dancing. I'm going to go with line dancing. Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to think about what's going to be the most physical idea. Actually, I'm going to switch it, and you'll see why afterwards. All right, someone said playing cornhole. Cornhole is a game where you throw a beanbag, and you got to throw it through another hole that's a distance, and you go back and forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quick 1-minute lecture on how to master playing cornhole. And I'm going to do it in 1 minute, and I've got a timer here on my iPhone. I'm going to run the timer. At the end of 1 minute, I'm going to do some additional stuff, and I'll explain what. But first, I'm going to share with you how to master cornhole. Here we go. Go. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to share with you the keys you need to know to master the amazing game of cornhole. Cornhole is a lot of fun, and it's very relaxing. And there's 3 things you must do. Number 1, before playing cornhole, you must stretch. Now, you might not think it's very active, but you need big stretches, right? So take your arms wide, stretch up, way down, and stretch your body all the way down. Because hamstring injuries are very popular in cornhole. You cannot do your best if you're tight. The second thing you need to do is proper form, right? So start with the ball up here, or the stack up here, go all the way back. You want this over your head to get maximum power, and throw it high. You want a big arc like a moonshot, which is going to really make it go, and then it'll land. And number 3, what I want you to do is run. Now, cornhole doesn't seem like running, but when you switch sides like you do in cornhole, don't just saunter. I want you to run as fast as you can, because that gets your heart rate up, and it's going to freak out your opponent. So to summarize, the 3 things you need to do. Number 1 is stretch. Number 2, practice great form. And number 3, run as fast as you can. If you do those 3, you will master the art of cornhole. And that's time. Okay, so you might be sitting there wondering, well, okay, that was silly. This is not a seminar on cornhole. Why did he do that? Well, I'm going to demonstrate why I did that. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to re-explain cornhole. Some of you may have missed the finer point. I'm going to talk about the 3 keys to winning at cornhole again, but this time I'm cutting the time in half. Instead of 1 minute, I'm going to do that whole thing in 30 seconds. I'm going to share all that advice, but in 30 seconds, going through the whole thing again with all the physicality. All right, here we go. In 30 seconds, cornhole. Welcome. Thank you for joining me for my talk on how to be great at cornhole. Cornhole is a lot of fun, and it's very relaxing. There's 3 things you got to do. The first thing is you got to stretch, and not small stretches. You got to stretch big, up, and go, because hamstring injuries are very common. Number 2, you got to get good form. So take the sack, go way up over your head, and then hold it. You want to go as high as possible so it moonshots and goes in. And number 3 is you got to run. You may not think about it, but you got to run super fast. So when you switch sides, run to the other side. It'll freak the opponent out. It'll get your heart rate up, and you'll win. Those are 3 skills. And that's time. Okay, so that's 30 seconds. Now, I said this is a silly game, but it's a lot of fun. I'm going to do this one more time, and I'm going to replay that game, sharing those 3 key skills to winning at cornhole in 15 seconds. 15 seconds, ready, and go. 3 skills for cornhole. Number 1, you got to stretch. You got to stretch big. You got to stretch down so your hamstrings don't get hurt. Number 2, you got to get good form. Go way up high, throw it way up high, and let it go. Number 3, you got to run. Run all the way to the other side, freak your opponent out, and get your heart rate up, and that's how you win at cornhole. Time. All right, and now I'm going to do one more time. I can't cut the time in half again, so I'm going to go down to 5 seconds. In 5 seconds, I'm going to do that entire talk about how to win at cornhole. And go. To win at cornhole, number 1, stretch big, don't hurt yourself. Number 2, good form, go up. Number 3, run as fast as you can, freak out your opponent. And time. Okay, so right now, you're there thinking, okay, Avish is a bit of a hyper performer. That's how that game goes. So what is the point of that? All right, what is the point of that? So here's the deal. That is a popular improv game called Countdown or Diminishing Returns. It's a high energy game. We used to end shows with that when I performed improv regularly. I ran a group. So, yes, there you go, summary versus detail. Well, sort of, yes. So one person chatted, the difference there is summary versus detail. And that is true to a degree. But here's the thing. When you do the minute version, there is fluff. There is dead space. There's stuff that doesn't really matter. As we go down to 30 seconds, you can still kind of get away with having some dead space and time in there. When you go down to 15 seconds, you have to really hack away all the unessentials, right? I like Bruce Lee, a martial arts guy, hack away the unessentials is one of his quotes. And at the 5-second version, all you can do is say the most important thing. Now, is that summary versus detail? Yes, to a degree. What it also forces me to do is to absolutely remove everything that is not critical to the instruction and just focus on what are the things I have to say to convey that scene. In 5 seconds, it's 3 skills for cornhole, stretch to keep your hamstring safe, high arc with good form, and run to freak out your opponent. Now, in the same way, well, when you play that game, there's actually, what some people will try to do is they will, thank you very much, someone said awesome point, appreciate it. What some people, performers will try to do is they will try to say all the words and do all the actions from the 1-minute version in the 30-second version, which they can kind of get away with. But then they'll try to do all the same actions and try to fit it all in the 15-second version. And then the 5. And when they do that, number 1, they never finish on time. And number 2, a lot of times you'll play this game with 2 or 3 performers. People start talking over each other. It's a cacophony. We don't get anywhere. So by distilling it down, we identify the essence of the scene. And what's interesting is distilling it down also adds entertainment. What I love about this game as a performer is when we do, one of the reasons I would end it, I would use this to end shows, is it's high energy, it's a great way to finish, but it's almost guaranteed to work. Simply because when you do the 1-minute scene, even if the 1-minute scene is not particularly funny, just the act of distilling it down increases the energy and humor. So that tightening actually makes it more successful. So how about off stage? Well, I bet right now, if you're like me, and I do this constantly, probably once every 3 days, I start reevaluating. How can I operate during this pandemic, right? I'm a speaker. I do things live. I was supposed to be in Wilmington with you guys today. This is my business. This is how I make money for my family, right? I'm a sole income provider, so I really was freaking out. And there are things speaker colleagues are doing, other businesses are doing, ideas I had. And they all look good. But we in the business call that the bright, shiny object syndrome. There's lots of things out there that look good and exciting. And I guarantee you, when you start pursuing things because they might work, and you start getting pulled away from what your core is, they almost always fizzle. They never get very far. If we want to get more efficient and effective and respond to change, we need to first start by identifying what our core is, and then focusing on that. If you had to distill things down from 1 minute to 5 seconds, what would be the key priorities and elements of your job, of your career, of your team and organization, right? Or at home as a spouse, a parent, a child, a friend, community member. Whatever it is you're doing, when we can really identify and then say, okay, let me say yes, and here's how I'm going to build off of that. Now, it's almost embarrassing. I'm almost embarrassed to share this with you, but I have been thinking for years about how, you know what, travel is great, but I got 2 little kids at home, and I literally thought to myself that something may happen at some point which is going to make travel hard, right? I'm thinking back to 2008 when meetings economy crashed, so meetings went away for a while. 2001, when 9/11, meetings and travel went away. And I knew something was coming. And I thought about virtual. I was like, you know what? I need to come up with a virtual option. But at the time, I didn't follow my own advice. It was hard. It was different. And also, every idea I had was things like coaching, consulting, right? Writing, stuff that wasn't really my core. My core is I'm a performer, and I love to do improv comedy. So now going through this situation, realizing now necessity being the mother of invention, I had to come up with ways of shifting my model to non-travel. I came up with so many ideas that take me so off course. And it wasn't until constantly reminding myself, what is your core? For me, it's performing. So what I am doing 90% of the time in my attempts at innovation is starting from that place. And that's what you see before you hear. Normally, improv has multiple performers. I get volunteers on stage. I have live audience interaction. All I've been trying to do is how can I keep my core, which is performing improv comedy, in this new format. So in the same way, what is your core? What are the few key things that you really need to focus on? Now, this doesn't mean you can ignore all of the other priorities and responsibilities, but innovating from identity is what's going to lead you to innovation. It's going to lead you to that next level, and it's what's going to engage yourself and your team. Because I promise, if you're innovating from identity, that's going to be exciting. If you're innovating from opportunity, like what can we do? Some people respond to that, many do not. It's also a great exercise for those of you who are leaders with your team. Find out from them. What do they see as their core? What do they see as the key things to build off of? And start going from there. That's how you're going to come through this change better, not back, by starting with your core and where you are. All right, so that's the second thing to say yes and to. Identify and focus your core. All right, third thing to say yes and to respond to change is to say yes and to constraints. Constraints are usually looked at as negative. They're things that limit us. So right now, constraint is remote working. We can't see each other in person. That is a huge constraint. In general, constraints are low budget, not enough time, not enough manpower and personnel, right? Sometimes policy restrictions, legal restrictions. These are all constraints. And they do limit us. And we spend a lot of times wishing things could be different. Like, why can't, I wish this constraint wasn't here. I wish I didn't have this limitation. But what's interesting is that your constraints can be your greatest opportunity for innovation and creativity, right? This can unlock your genius if you look at it properly. In improv comedy, there's really two kinds of improv comedy. There's long form and short form. And what I'm doing is short form. And with short form, you get suggestions from the audience, and you often have rules, like ringing the bell, or having to do the whole thing in 60 seconds, or only being able to start with yes and. And what's interesting is every one of those rules is a constraint. And what you learn is that the constraint actually helps the game. So for example, this ding game I started with. I'm in the middle of telling a story. I'm going in a certain direction. The bell rings. I can't tell the story I want to tell anymore. It's a constraint. And when I'm doing this live, I will get a volunteer on stage who I don't know, give them the bell, and they can ring anytime they want. That's a huge constraint. I have no idea when they're going to ring it. What I have found over the years, though, this is how I start my talk. And if the game bombs, I'm in big trouble. Thank you. I'm in big trouble. I've lost credibility with the audience. I start out them saying, wow, that's a horrible game. Who is this person? My big fear when I hand the bell to an audience volunteer is not that they're going to ring the bell too much. My big fear is that they will not ring the bell enough. Because every time they ring the bell, it's an opportunity to drive the story in a new direction. The constraint makes it work. The time this game hasn't worked is because the volunteer is sitting there and ringing the bell like, and you can sometimes hear other people in the audience saying, ring, ring. So it's the constraint, when looked at properly, drives our creativity and takes us in a direction. I'm gonna do one more improv game here for this. It's a fun game about constraints, and it is, it's pretty simple. It's a game called A to Z. This is gonna be another one where normally you'd have two people acting it out, so I'm gonna play two roles here. And you can start thinking, I'm gonna need a suggestion for this game, and I'm gonna ask for it now, and then I'll explain the game, and then I'll look through the suggestions. So what I'm going to need is a way that two people might know each other or be connected. So a way they're related, but not necessarily by blood. So it could be like employee and boss, or or whatever. What's a relationship two people might have, a way two people might know each other or be connected? Now, while you're typing them in, I will, common X, oh my goodness, that's amazing. All right, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen is, I'm going to play an improv game called A to Z. And the way that's going to work is, when my first character talks, the first word out of their mouth is going to start with the letter A. When the next person starts, the first word out of their mouth is going to start with the letter B, and then C, and then D, and then E, and so on. And I'll get as far as I can. And I'm going to go for about a minute here as well, just so it doesn't go on too long. There's some great suggestions here, but I saw common X, which is pretty interesting. I've never gotten that before. So I'm going to start at A. I'm going to see how far through the alphabet I can get in 1 minute, where the first person starts with A, then B, then C, then D. And I'll start the time as soon as I start talking. So so person A, and there's one person over here, one person over there, just to set it up for you. They have a common ex-girlfriend, or they have a common ex-wife, and we're going to see a conversation between the two of them. And go. Are you Helen's ex-boyfriend, ex-husband? Boyfriend, actually, we never actually got married, but we lived together, so it's kind of a common law thing. Common law? Oh my God, no wonder she hates commitment so much. You really never proposed after being with her so long. Did you know that I thought about proposing, but Helen was really kind of annoying and I didn't want to get married to her. Every time I think about getting married to her too, I also think about how annoying she is. Freedom is what I value more than anything, and Helen would always kind of nag me and never let me do anything. Are you still with her? God, no. I'd like to say I dumped her, but she dumped me. How on earth did you get her to dump you? I tried to get her to dump me. I wanted out, but she would never let me. I just started drinking all day long, and eventually she kicked me out, which was great. Just because I was drinking, I didn't want to drink. She stayed with me. That's it. I could have gotten out so much easier. Kill your negativity, man. Listen, we are out of this together, and maybe the two of us can start an ex-Helen club. Look, I would love to join that club, but I got to get to work. All right, and that's time. That's 1 minute. Okay, just to stop there. Normally, you let that game go all the way. Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Someone said applause. Normally, you let that game go all the way to Z. For the sake of time in the program, I did that timer. There you go. I had a timer for two reasons. One is just for the sake of time. You don't need to see the whole scene played out when it's just me, friendly going back and forth. But the way that game works is, when you're playing that game, let's just say that you were hypothetically my partner here. Now imagine you're playing that game with me, and I say something like, are you Helen's ex-husband? You may have a response that pops in your head that says like, no. If the word out of your mouth that you want to say doesn't start with the next letter of the alphabet, say B, your thought may be, how can I say what I wanted to say without starting with the next letter of the alphabet? So are you Helen's ex-husband? No, I want to say no. How can I say no in a way that starts with a B? And that slows the game down, saps the energy, and sucks your creativity. Because what you're doing is you said, I had a fixed path, I wanted to stay on it, and I'm trying to rapidly think of how I can get there. I add the timer to this game, number one, like I said, just to keep it tight, but also to drive creativity. Because when you play this game, there's two ways you can do it. The first is you can ask yourself, how can I say what I wanted to say with that letter of the alphabet? When you can't think of something right away, the next way to play it is to just say the first word that comes out of your mouth. That starts with the next letter of the alphabet, and then make that work. So, for example, someone commented on Kill Your Negativity, Man. I didn't know what to say when someone said, you know, I forget exactly what he said, but the just because I did that, this person was negative. Nothing really popped in my head but the word kill. So kill your negativity, man. Now that led the next, all right, we'll get to that. Someone's saying, don't make me say the first thing because of my mind. In this improv game, say the first thing that comes to your mind. Because when I said kill, I didn't know where that was going to go. But that came out to kill your negativity, man. And this is an idea in improv called justification. Why did I just say kill your creativity or kill your negativity? Well, because we're going to start a club. Well, guess what? Now, if that scene continued, it would be about forming this club for where to go. So you see how I have two choices. I can say, here's my path. Let me rack my brain trying to stay on that path in this constraint. Or I can say, this constraint is stopping me going on that path. Let me innovate within it to say the first word and drive things in a new direction. This is the heart of all short form improv comedy. When the bell rings and I'm playing that game, if I think, how can I keep telling, let me say something different, but go back to the same path, it would not be fun or creative. So what you want to do, right now, there are all these constraints. And believe me, it's very common. Your most common mindset right now might be, how can we keep doing things how we were before, right? The better, not back idea, right? Oh, now we've got this constraint. People are working remotely. Well, here's what we used to do. How do we stick this round peg into that square hole? Use the constraint to start as a jumping point for your creativity. Well, this is our new place. How can we use this constraint to our advantage? My favorite example of this is actually from Hollywood. One of my favorite movies of all time is the 1975 classic movie Jaws. All right, any Jaws fans out there? Let's hope. You don't have to chat that in. But I love Jaws. It's an awesome movie. And for those who don't know or unfamiliar with Jaws, it's a movie about a big shark. And this movie came out in 1975. And when it came out, it is the first summer blockbuster. It's the first movie to hit $100 million at the box office. It's also the movie that put Steven Spielberg on the map. It's only his second feature film. And when it came out, people said, Spielberg is an amazing director. And one of the reasons they said he was an amazing director is because he was smart enough to not show the shark on screen very much. To this point with horror movies and creature features, they would have a lot of, they show the monster a lot, right? The creature in the Black Lagoon and his like rubber outfit. And in Jaws, you don't see the shark. You don't see the shark at all for like the first hour. Then you see a quick glimpse of it. Instead, you'll see point of view shots where it's like the camera underwater as if you are the shark. Sometimes you'll just see water and hear a little bit of John Williams music that he won an Oscar for. So you know the shark is there, but you don't see it. Most interestingly, the entire second half of the movie is the three main characters on a boat trying to kill the shark. And the way they do it is they have a harpoon gun, and they'll shoot the shark when he swims by. The harpoon is attached to a rope, which is attached to a yellow barrel. Harpoon goes in the shark, barrel goes in after it. Now, there are huge chunks of the movie where you don't see the shark, you just see a yellow barrel. And the tension that ramps up, because when the yellow barrel is there, you know the shark is there, you just don't know where exactly. So, people said this makes Steven Spielberg a genius. He was smart enough to be like Alfred Hitchcock. He knew that showing the shark less would increase the tension and make the movie more powerful. Turns out, this was entirely by accident. This was not Steven Spielberg's plan. Like I said, I love this movie. I own the documentary. I watched it. Turns out, in Steven Spielberg's original storyboards, he wanted to show the shark a whole lot more. He was planning on showing the shark a lot. The problem was it was a mechanical shark, and the salt water off Martha's Vineyard where they shot kept wrecking the parts. The shark never worked. In fact, they talk about how every morning over the PA you hear, the shark is not working, the shark is not working. And they can't shoot all the shots they had lined up. So they're sitting there with a shark movie where they can't show the shark even though they wanted to. Production's going over time, over budget, they're freaking out. And in this case, they had three choices. Number one, they could stick with their original plan. They could say, well, here are storyboards. We plan on showing the shark a lot. It's not working. We'll just have to keep pushing through until it gets done. Number two, they could say, well, it's never going to work. This is too hard. Let's just quit and not make this movie at all. The third thing they could do is to innovate. They could use that constraint of the shark not working in the water as a launching point for creativity to make something that's even better than what their original plan was, right? The point of view shot, the music, the yellow barrel. In fact, it wasn't even Steven Spielberg who came up with the idea of the yellow barrel. It was Carl Gottlieb, the screenwriter, who on set saw them and said, what if we did that? And it made the movie so much better. And if you've seen the movie, it's actually not that hard to imagine, because as terrifying as the movie is, especially now, when that shark pops out at the very end, it looks pretty fake and mechanical. For 1975, it looked great. But as someone said in the chat here, imagination is powerful. By using that constraint to drive their creativity, they came up with something way more effective and powerful than their original plan would have been. So ask yourself, here are my constraints. You have three choices. Number one, you can just give up. And most of you are not going to do that simply because that would mean losing your job and quitting and having, no income. But that's one option. Number two, stick to your original plan. Like I said, kind of jokingly at the beginning, we all had our 2020 vision boards and dreams and goals and plans. You can keep sticking with those even though things have changed. Core number three, use this constraint as a starting point for your creativity to find out how can we use this to our advantage. How can I use this constraint to generate a new idea that other people aren't doing that's going to make things even better than it was before. All right. So those are your three ideas to say yes and to. Number one, to change. Number two, to the core, identify and focus on the core. And number three, to the constraints that are going on in your life, in your business, and see how you can adapt to those. I do want to share one more important area that you can say yes and to. If you haven't figured out, I have a lot of passion around the idea of saying yes and. It's made a huge impact on my life. And in fact, shameless plug, I wrote a book called Say Yes And, which might be reversed on your thing, but it's Say Yes And, so go buy it. But I wrote a book. This is such a huge piece of my business. It's the point that people like the most. And I think it's so important to me because I honestly believe that all people are just one good yes and away from a transformation. I think if you say the right yes and at the right moment, you can make tremendous progress. Oh, thank you. Someone shared the Amazon link in the chat. I really appreciate that. And I believe this is true because my whole life hinged on one important yes and moment. See, I've been doing this, I said, years now, right? I started this business in 2003. So it's been about 17 years since I've been a professional speaker. As I said, this is what I do and using improv, and I'm so happy and fortunate and blessed to be able to do this. But when I started out, I did not have overnight success. I started out clueless, right? When I started, I had no clients, no prospects, no leads, not a lot of experience speaking or training, and not really any knowledge about how to build a speaking business. But I was at one of those life crossroads, and I thought, all right, well, I want to be a speaker someday, so why not today? So I launched my business, and because I was so clueless and inexperienced, it was a struggle. And I got no bookings for a while. I was struggling. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt very alone. And then I came across an organization called the National Speakers Association, right? Similar to NCLGISA, just instead of information people for governments, it was for speakers. And it was amazing because I'd go and there'd be educational content, and I'd learn so much, and wonderful people, right? I liked everyone. Those great people, I liked everyone I met, except for one person. You know, there's that one person, you don't even have to talk to them. You can just walk into the ballroom and see them standing there across the way and think, I'm not going to like you. You just know from the way they're standing. Well, I picked out my target right away. It was a short, redheaded woman, and I could tell from her body language and face that I needed to stay away. But again, the universe had other plans for me because I had to ask her one day, at one meeting, I had to ask her a question. So I walk up to her and very politely say, excuse me, Kristen? Now, this turned out to be a problem because her name was not Kristen. It was Kirsten. I'm like, come on, I was close, right? But from this look of utter contempt, you would have thought I walked up to her and said, excuse me, Cookie? And you think I'd have more sympathy. You know, you heard Steve say my name there. It's not the most common name in the world, though it's pronounced Avish. And I get variations all the time on it. People say Avish, Avish, Avish. One time someone called me VJ. Like, you're not even trying, sir. You think I'd have more sympathy, but I didn't. I was like, whatever. Kirsten, Kristen, Cookie, Kafka, I don't care. It's just reinforced. I would have nothing to do with her. But again, the universe had other plans. Because for the Speakers Association, I was invited to join them on a planning retreat where we would go away for 2 days and plan out events and stuff for the chapter. Well, I'm excited to go, and I get there. Well, guess who comes walking in the door on the morning of the first day? Little Miss Cookie. I'm like, come on, I don't want to spend 2 seconds with this person. I have spent 2 full days working with her. But then something interesting happened on the morning of day 1. She dropped some business advice that got me thinking, that could really help my business. But the problem was I needed more information, which means I had to talk to her. And immediately the yes buts began in my head. Yeah, but you don't like her. Yeah, but what if she helps you and then you owe her? Yes, but what if she bites me? weird sort of fear to have, but I realized to me over the month now, in my head, I built her up as kind of like this mean little yappy dog, you know, little body, big voice, lots of attitude. Not PC, but honest. But then I realized, Avish, you are saying a lot of yes, but, and you actually teach people to say yes, and can you walk your talk? Which is something we should all remind ourselves from time to time. Yes, and this might help your business. Yes, and when it helps your business, you won't care where the advice came from. Yes, and if she bites you, you can make some money by suing her, right? Yes, and go do it. So I walk up to her and very politely say, excuse me, Kirsten, and I ask my question. And her response was polite, friendly, and helpful. So I ask a follow-up. And this leads to us chatting. This leads to us having conversation and hanging out the entire 2 days. By the end of it, we had such a good time talking, we exchanged cards and say, we have a lot in common, let's keep talking. So we get together a week later for lunch, and lunch is normally like an hour. We spend 5 hours at this one coffee shop just chatting and getting to know each other. Now, before you get ahead of me, I know where some of you think this is going. Ooh, this is very romantic. Sorry, I hate to burst your bubble, nothing romantic happened. We didn't start dating, we didn't get married. We don't have a whole litter of little yappy dogs running around our feet right now. But she did become a very good friend of mine and still is to this day. More relevant to you as a professional group. The first year I started to see any success in the speaking business, where I started to get over the hump. I could track 50 to 75% of my business back to her. She was a marketing speaker, so she gave me advice on my positioning, my niche, my marketing message. She passed on leads and referrals who went on to hire me. We even did a 6-month consulting contract, the two of us working together with a company on their creativity and communication skills. I don't know if I'd still be in business today if it wasn't for her help in those early years. I don't know if I'd still be in business 10 years ago if it wasn't for her help in those early years. And it's all because in one moment, I was able to stop saying yes, but, and switch to yes, and. Now here's the thing, I got lucky. The universe kept putting Kirsten in front of me, and I kept saying yes, but, until finally I switched to yes, and then my life changed. But so often, we only get one shot at it. An opportunity comes by. If you say yes, but, it's gone. Someone else gets it, or it just disappears. So my question to you is, what are you saying yes, but to right now? Who are you saying yes, but to? What opportunity is passing you by? Because it's easier to stay in your comfort zone and say yes, but. And how might things change? What ideas have popped in your head for how you can get through this, how you can innovate, how you can get better, not bad? What ideas are you saying yes, but to that maybe if you say yes, and to them and start acting on them, you'll start to see some interesting things start to happen. Now, this is just the kickoff of this conference, this virtual event. I applaud your planners and organizers for really saying yes and to pivoting and keeping it virtual. And you are going to learn a lot of stuff over the rest of the conference. And some of those things are going to challenge ideas you have, and some of those things you're going to hear, and you're going to immediately say, yeah, but I can't do that. Yeah, but that won't work in my organization. Yeah, but that won't work for my government. Step back. Find a way to say yes and to some of those things, and that's when the excitement's going to happen. So that is my talk. I'm going to finish up with one final improv game. Before I do, what I'm going to ask you to do is in the chat is I'm going to need your help to write down an occupation, a type of job, but an unusual type of job. Say one that, even if someone paid you more money, you would never want to do, or if your colleague came to you and said, hey, I'm quitting my job to go do this for the rest of my life. Here's what I'm going to do. Fighter pilot, that might be something you want to do. And stripper, chimney sweep, worm bait packer. And while that's going on, I am going to do a quick little plug here. Worm bait packer, I don't know what that is. Hot dog salesman, septic tank cleaner, elephant pooper scooper, dog walker, tiger trainer. Okay, so I'm going to tell you motivational speaker. Thank you very much, sir. I guess that means there'll be less competition for me. Or ma'am, I'm sorry, I can see the name. So, all right, I'm going to go with elephant pooper scooper. And here's how this is going to work. I am going to share with you a story. I'm going to leave you. This is a point in a typical motivational speaker's presentation where they finish up with an inspiring story to send you on your way. I kind of told mine about my little friend, but normally they tell you a story about something amazing like climbing Mount Everest. I was climbing Mount Everest, but then a storm unexpectedly came in. I was blinded by the snow, and I had my one-legged dog strapped to my back, and I had to build an igloo and survive by eating ice for 7 days. And really, I said elephant pooper scooper, and someone chatted, that's a load. Now I really regret not being there in person. This would have been a lot of fun. So having not had that story, instead, I'm going to improvise the story. I build myself as the world's only motivational improviser. So instead of telling you this inspiring story about climbing Mount Everest, which I don't have, instead, I'm going to improvise and make up a story for you. It's going to be a story that's going to somehow involve an elephant pooper scooper that's going to be very inspirational for you. But this is a game called Blind Line. Now, if I was live, normally I'd have you write things down on a slip of paper and I'd collect them. Instead, what I've done, I got a bowl with strips of paper, and I went to a website and found like 100 great movie quotes, cut them up, and put them in here. And what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start telling you my story, but periodically I'm going to pull out a script and read whatever quote or sentence is written on there, and then incorporate that in my story in a way that hopefully makes sense. Going back to what I said about using the interruption, using the constraint as a launching point for the next bit. So hopefully this is a fun, inspiring way to end, kind of an entertaining way to end, to send you on your next session. But also see if you can catch the improv idea, the saying yes and, the using the constraint, right? The identifying the core of the story, all that stuff. So it's a way of having fun to end, but also to demonstrate some of the stuff I talked about. And before I finish up with that, I'm also going to, in the chat box, if you want more information, I put a link to my website /gift. There are some free downloads. There's a summary postcard, more from one of my other programs. This is kind of custom because of the virtual format, but there's a summary postcard. There's an improv game guide with 9 improv games, instructions on how to play them, how to use them. And there's some other free stuff. There's a free audio recording. So if you go to jinghappens.com/gift, I put that in the chat box. It's just an email address. It's totally free. You can get that stuff. Okay, here we go. I'm going to finish up with a motivational story about an elephant pooper scooper. Here we go. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me for my talk about an elephant pooper scooper. You see, I'm going to motivate you by telling you a story from my own life. Many years ago when I was out of college, I couldn't find a job, so I took the first job I could get. And the circus was in town. So I went in and I said, "Excuse me, sir, I would like to work for your circus." And the ringmaster, he looked at me and he was not impressed. In fact, he looked at me and he said, "Toto, I've got a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore." And I said, "No, you're right. We're in Philadelphia. You are far away from Kansas." And that's when I realized this man had dementia. He didn't know where he was, but he was holding on to his job as ringmaster, and I needed to help him. So rather than calling him out on that, I said, "Well, listen, how about if I help you? I will be your like guide and speak to you, but what I need you to do is give me any kind of job." And he said, "Well, okay, that sounds good. Why don't you be the elephant pooper scooper?" Now, my first thought to that was not to say yes and. In fact, my first thought was, "I am big." It's the pictures because I got small from Sunset Boulevard. I said, "I am big. I am above pooper scoopering. I don't want to do this." And the ringmaster looked at me and said, "Well, that's the only job we have. Take it or leave it." And I was so heartbroken, and just my ego was so hurt by it, but I knew I had to do it. So I said, "Fine, I'll take it." And I walked over, and when I walked in and I smelled the elephant dung, oh my God, I just said out loud, I couldn't even say it to myself, I said out loud, "A sensor taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti." And that's how I felt. I realized that, if Hannibal Lecter could eat people, well, that's pretty gross. I was so upset by this elephant, but I wasn't going to eat him. In fact, I was going to be better than Hannibal Lecter. I was not going to eat the elephant poop. I was going to do the best I could. And that's where I dug deep. I said, "You know what? I'm going to do the best elephant pooper scooper because that's how I can be of service to the ringmaster." And the first day I was scooping, it's like I had a transformation. It was like God himself spoke to me from heaven and said, "E.T., phone home. E.T., phone home." And that's what I realized. Yes, this is what I've been lacking. I've been lacking that connection. E.T., I think the misconnect was, it was kind of like saying P.T. Barnum phone home. It was like E.T. phone home. I had not told my family what I was doing. And I realized this was a metaphor. Scooping the elephant poop was a metaphor for my family. I had left home to fend for myself because I felt home was like scooping poop, and here I was doing it for real. And I said, I need to get past that. That's where my breakthrough came. So I picked up the phone that day and I called home. And when my mom heard my voice, she said to me, "Love means never having to say you're sorry." That's very appropriate. I said, "Good. I had no interest in saying I'm sorry, but I want to come home and stop scooping poop." And my mom said, "Okay, that's great." But I said, "Listen, the problem is I'm helping this ringmaster clear up his dementia. Do you think maybe we can take him to the hospital?" And my mom said something that changed my life. And if you remember this, it'll change your life too. My mom said to me, "They call me Mr. Tibbs." And my mom was a big fan of In the Heat of the Night, In the Heat of the Night. And I realized what she was saying is Mr. Tibbs did what was right in the face of darkness and problems. And that's what she would do. And that's when I realized I didn't want to leave that circus. I didn't need to run home. I was going to be like Mr. Tibbs, and I was going to scoop poop to the best of my ability, and I was going to do what was right in the face of darkness. And my life changed. I became the best pooper scooper ever, and I helped the ringmaster, and that circus is thriving. And right now, you might be sitting and thinking to yourself, okay, that's great for you, but what does this have to do with me? Well, you're hopefully never going to scoop elephant poop, but you're probably sitting there with a goal in your life, and when you think about that goal, you say to yourself, oh, I dropped that. You say to yourself, fasten your seatbelt, it's going to be a bumpy night. And it is, but being Mr. Tibbs, when it gets bumpy, don't give up. Don't just fasten your seatbelt, but really buckle down. Be like Mr. Tibbs and do what was right. And if I could leave you with a final thought about the power of elephant scooping pooper scooping, it is this. Go ahead, make my day. Thank you very much. Thank you for chatting and participating. I truly appreciate it. If you have questions, if you go to dinghappens.com, you can get my contact info. Send me an email, give me a call. I'd love to chat. Thank you guys for having me and pivoting and innovating. And go to dinghappens.com/gift to get some free downloads and stay in touch. Thank you very much. And Steve, I will now turn it back to you.